Chapter 26, Fullness of Joy. 2 glad services are ours, both the Master loves to bless, first to serve with all our powers, and then with all our helplessness. There was no doubt about it. Mentally, spiritually, Lilias enjoyed the bedridden years. She had fought for so long that when her tired body collapsed, she was heard to murmur, "It is so nice being in bed. I don't know why everybody doesn't take to it." To be held here comes with a sense of great relief, a feeling of being able to concentrate on things that need doing without any loss of power. Nor was this merely the initial reaction, for the deep content lasted. This evening closes the year since coming to bed to stay there. I think it had been the happiest year of my life, for it is wonderful to lie and watch the new horizons unfolding. Long ago, 50 years or more, it was a joy to think that God needed me. Now it is far deeper joy to know that He does not need me. All the movement and excitement of those days continued to flow around her bed till the end, and her sister Margaret, who visited her in 1926, was amazed and delighted at the full, happy life she was living. She named her the Guru because of all the loving little gifts that poured in. For it was an exciting time in the mission, and she was able to sit back and take its measure. She wrote, "All these things are so wonderful to watch, and all the more wonderful for watching from a quiet room full of flowers instead of from a dim and dust of the battlefield. Good though it was when God gave it. Now it is easier to trace the workings out of His ways and to almost see that thought that links them. These long looks into the past, the recognition of the times of failure, the knowledge that many had backslidden and few had preserved, did not cloud or depress her spirit. She was comforted at the time by a passage in the Song of Solomon, one of her favorite study books. Until the day breaks, the shadows flee away. I will get me to the mountain of myrrh and to the holy hill of frankincense. This has been the word of the Lord to me today, with a meaning hitherto unseen, that the gathering of the bittersweet myrrh of heartbrokenness over failure and shortcomings, over all that might have beens of the past, can bring us nearer to Jesus than all the gatherings of frankincense on the hills. Such is the abounding grace, that even where sin has abounded, the place where we wash His feet with our tears has the great nearness to His holy place above." The view from her room was a constant joy as the seasons changed. She loved the great dome of the pine, olive green against the primrose sky before sunrise, sage green against the turquoise of midday, bronze and copper against the opal tint of sunset. She rejoiced in the coming of those North African springs. The last storm of winter is over, and the plum tree outside stands with glittering drops of sunshine against the darkness of the pine. Your sorrow shall be turned to joy, comes with a shout of triumph, just as those starry diamonds are transmuted out of the storm. Everyone vied to bring her the first, rarest flowers to her room became a garden of delight. She used to say, "The flowers are my teachers. I have been watching with great interest the different expressions of the flowers as they die, the beautiful, worldly, barren things, like the white rose and the magnolia, put on a look of fading self-pity as they droop, clinging to their stalks to the last. But the little wildflowers keep happy faces wide open till the petals are ready to drop, and then they fold their hands of the calyx over the growing treasure of the seed vessel, which was the whole purpose of their being. Life lived for the seen, life lived for the unseen is written all over them." There was, and the months drew on, both pain and increasing weakness, and the French doctor who attended her marveled as he considered that it was très bizarre that she was alive at all, with her heart apparently scarcely functioning, but being so she might, under the same condition, continue to live. She rejoiced in the verdict, for she herself felt very strongly that she was being kept alive by the very life of God. She wrote, "There has been a vivid realization these days of the two distinct fauci of life, the one nourished by earthly food and the other by the tree of life. This seems especially true the night when the lower springs sink so low that it seems as though only the upper springs hold on. I wonder if we shall discover later on that the two have been more linked than we guessed. It has come with fresh light today during those hours of the cross that it was our natural life that was crucified with Christ, and that when we assent to this, it sinks out of the way. The Spirit of God indwelling our spirits can act unhindered on the body, and the quickening power that He promised, making it, whether in weakness or strength, the instrument for whatever He needs done. The patience of Christ has been the utmost word today, and His binding hand and foot in those first hours at Bethlehem. The nail-held hands at the feet during the last hours at Calvary, and between the two we have a glimpse of the fight for the field of patience. Patience with physical exhaustion, patience for the hour of our deliverance, willingly taking up the yoke and finding rest. We may know the hour when we really take His yoke upon us. It is the hour when we find rest to our souls. There were goodbyes to be said during those last months to the Teeleys and to old Mr. Smeaton, those whose saintly life and prayers had been an inspiration to them all for many years. But together they rejoiced in the fact, just before his health gave out, the government opened a large shelter for the blind, so that all his dear boys could be at least physically cared for. Reba Brading, who had nursed her so devotedly, went home to take up the growing work of the mission in England, and Belle Patrick joined her as prayer secretary. Each one was a wrench, but to Lilia's goodbyes were never very sad, because the reality and glory of the next meeting. The last months were not uneventful. At one point the house caught fire, and by the time the household was roused from the flames were streaming out of the windows a yard long. The women of the house made a string of buckets, and Mr. Theobald wielded the dilapidated hose until the fire brigade arrived and got the blaze under control. They carried Lilias to safety on a mattress and laid her by the reservoir. She wrote, "It was lovely lying there with Zora and her 4 tiny girls beside me, as peaceful and quiet as though nothing was going on. We all feel that the losses on the material side count nothing beside the sense of gain. The helpfulness showed us from all sides, the assurance that God has been glorified. It was beautifully expressed by Mimoun, our houseboy. When I thanked him for all he had done, he stood erect and pushed his fingers through his perpendicular black hair and round face glowing. Jesus was there, he said. He was there like he was that night on the sea. He trampled on the flames as he walked on the waves. Yes, Jesus was with us." The last celebration was for the 40th year of the mission, just 4 months before she died. It started on the evening before with a check for £100 desperately needed, and giving impetus to all faith for a forward move. The next day there was love all around, from morning till night, starting with the entrance of little George and Bobby in their apricot-colored jerseys, bearing great bunches of cream and white carnations, and the whole household flowing with gifts of every kind. Then came the prayer meeting, with praises first and foremost, and the last surprise was the trooping in of the whole Arab community, bringing in all the babies to be kissed. Her work was done. Many loving, capable hands had lifted the load. She knew that things would go on and expand, not perhaps in the same way, but based on the same clear principles of faith in God and selfless service to man she had clearly taught and demonstrated. The writing in the diaries grows faint, and the last penciled entry is almost illegible, but the message is crystal clear. It is the message she had lived by and would fain have passed on to those who followed, the message of God's joy. Open flowers, they are the last but one in the list of the temple carvings. Patience, fearlessness, purity, fruitfulness, and the passion for service. We have seen them all symbolized. Open flowers surely speak of the joy that is to run through it all. We speak so often of the love of God and the God of peace, so seldom of the God of joys, just that one thing that the open flowers speak of. She died very peacefully on August 28, 1928, with those who had loved her so much taking in its turns to watch beside her. It was a deeply sorrowful occasion for many of them, and yet sorrow seemed incongruous, for she herself had so longed to step over onto the other side and to enter into that fullness of joy that lay just out of sight. Then shall his smile discover many things. Why laugh the hearts of children at their play? Why skip the lambs, and why the skylark sings? She'd quoted those lines a short time before. Now she knew. Others had already stepped into positions of leadership, and as she anticipated, the work went on, and still goes on, although Algiers Mission Band has now become part of the new Arab World Ministries, formerly known as the North African Mission, and no longer functions as a separate organization. But we look back across the years and ask, what did that life really achieve? What mark has it left on the history of Christian missions? Some of the answers are obvious. Lilias Trotter was a pioneer in the field of Arabic Christian literature and probably scattered the gospel further and more widely in her time than anyone else. Constance Padwick, who brought out a short account of her life soon after she died, wrote the following. Miss Trotter's contribution to Christian literature for Muslims has been highly creative, more so than she ever knew on earth. The tracts and parables that she and her comrades brought out struck two fresh notes that have inspired many, and the tracts themselves have been translated into many languages. First, at the time when most literature for Muslims was dealing with the great points of differences between the two religions, Miss Trotter wrote stories that, with their intimate knowledge of Muslim life and thought, appealed to the fundamental likenesses, the great human needs of all souls. And secondly, at a time when a ministry literature, if illustrated at all, was adorned with old-fashioned blocks bought cheaply in England or America, Miss Trotter gave to all her leaflets a touch of oriental beauty, with two color designs that looked artistically right with the Arabic script instead of foreign and strange. Her influence on the life of many young people who came out to work with her was incalculable. She was perhaps one of the very few who could have said with the Apostle Paul, "Be followers of me as I am of Christ." She loved them with a selfless, bracing love that inspired them to raise to heights and to exercise talents and strengths of character that they had not known they possessed. She asked everything of them for God, and in almost every case they responded. Of her, one of them wrote, Miss Trotter has always seemed to me, in those nearly 20 years of working under her, like a knight with a pure white banner floating on high, and never for an instant lowering, a knight never off duty. No mention has been made here of the beautiful little book which she produced entitled Parables of the Cross and the Christ Life, now sadly out of print. There was no reference to it in her diaries, and it is difficult to place it chronologically. It is all about plants and seeds exquisitely illustrated in the minutest accuracy and detail, and it expounds in parable form all those beliefs and principles that formed the very foundation of her life. What was it that kept her believing against all evidence, hoping against all hope, willing to die not only content, but joyful, not having received the promises? Certain passages in this book provide a clue. The return is to him, as we see in parable. With the plants, they show us a love that seeks not her own. No one knows whence the seeds come, and when they reach their journey's end, no glory can possibly gather round the plants that surrendered their lives to form and shed them. They just give and give, with no aim but to be bare stalks when it is all done. Everything is loosed without a shade of calculation or self-interest. Not to us, O Lord, not to us, but unto thy name give glory. They are all saying in spirit, they teach us absolute indifference as to whether our service is appreciated or even recognized, so long as the work is done and the Lord is glorified. For God cannot get his whole glory as long as man gets any. So, no matter if we ever see the full upspringing on earth of each spirit seed scattered, it is all the more likely that God will trust us with a great multiplying if our faith does not need to witness it. He can grant us spiritual harvest out of sight, of which only he gains the glory, for there is no limit to what God can do with a man, provided he will not touch the glory. Her dream of self-governing Algerian church did not materialize in her day. At the time of her death, the number of Christian men who stood and remained faithful was pitifully small, and the women were mostly housebound or, in many cases, would never have been allowed to meet with men. But she was increasingly conscious of the whole family in heaven and earth, and she knew that there would be a great crowd of ransomed, believing Algerians to welcome her up there. But whatever the apparent result, she believed supremely in the ultimate triumph of prayer, and those spirit-prompted prayers uttered in such weakness and such faith are still vital and powerful. At the beginning of thy prayer, the commandment went forth, said the angel to Daniel. At the end of those 70 years, Lilias recognized that God's time for the Muslim world had not yet come. The seeds were sown. We have reaped a little, but we still await the great harvest of Pentecost that she so clearly foresaw. In a small booklet called Vibrations, Miss Trotter told of the day when the wall of her house had suddenly, without warning, fallen inwards. She had sent for a builder to repair it, but the first asked to investigate the cause. On returning from his exploratory trip outside, he explained that the kneading machine in the baker's shop next door had been vibrating against her wall every night for 20 years, gradually weakening the structure. Every stroke of the seesaw-like machine had done its work, but only the last had brought about the destruction. She believed with all her heart in that vibration of prayer that would gradually but insistently weaken the solid front of Islam. 40 years she did her part and died content, and we who follow have sought to carry on in that quiet rhythm. Already there are those cracks in the wall of which we may not speak, but she knew, and we know, that not one vibration is lost. Everyone does its work, and we cannot tell how soon or how late the great barrier will crumble. May God grant us the patience to live in faith and hope, and if necessary to die, not disappointed because the vision is yet for an appointed time. It hastens toward the goal, and it will not fail. Though it tarries, wait for it, for it will certainly come. It will not delay. Algeria today. Algeria today is in a state of change. The first democratic local elections have taken place, and the Islamic fundamentalists have gained ground. However, the turnout at the polls was low and partially boycotted. The results of the national elections planned for January 1991 will be more important. Plans to bring the countries of Maghreb together politically and economically will have considerable effect on the value of Algerian currency and the willingness of the foreign firms to invest in Algeria. It is difficult to imagine a time of more potential change. As sometime during the 1980s, the day has begun to break spiritually for Algeria. Today, many are dissatisfied with Islam because it does not answer the basic spiritual need of forgiveness from sin and personal knowledge of a Father God. The gospel is being explained to hundreds, maybe thousands, while still committed to their beloved country and wishing to serve their own people, are beginning to question Islam and are finding new life in Christ. How have we seen this spiritual dawn? Expatriate workers have used many means to share the gospel: Bible distribution, use of literature, radio, Bible correspondence, courses, films, videos, and personal friendship evangelism. In more recent years, Algerians living in Europe, as well as those resident in Algeria, have cooperated in spreading the good news and have taken new initiatives themselves. Many small groups are meeting in a variety of locations, and in one town we understand that there is a prayer meeting every night of the week. Miracles are happening. Visions and dreams are directing individuals to the truth and confirming the good news they hear. The crucial fact is that the Holy Spirit is at work today in response to the burden, prayers, and sacrifice of Lilias Trotter and others like her who labored in the past. The words of Jesus are relevant to all those working in Algeria today. I have sent you to reap what you have not worked for. Others have done the hard work, and you have reaped the benefits of their labor. John 4:38. The spiritual dawn is brighter in Algeria than any other North African country. Fear is a key factor because of persecution from family, loss of employment, the threat of imprisonment, and sometimes physical attack. The fear of man can hold back the work of God. In Algeria, many young believers have overcome this fear and are boldly standing for their faith despite the threats. The prayer for the early church must be our constant prayer for those in Algeria and across the rest of North Africa. Now, Lord, consider their threats and enable your servants to speak your word with great boldness. Acts 4:29. If you, as a Christian, have been spoken to by the story and burden of Lilias Trotter, and you identify with this prayer for the Arab world and long to see the daybreak develop into a spiritual noon, you are welcome to write the Arab World Ministries, P.O. Box 51, Lolberg, Lix, LE 110ZQ. The Algiers Mission Band merged with the North African Mission in 1965. Subsequently, the name was changed to the Arab World Ministries in September 1987, reflecting its vision of taking the gospel to all Muslims of the Arab world.